These are some of the most disturbing crimes that happen in the Five Nights at Freddy's community, and as the list goes on, the cases will only keep getting worse. It's April 19th, 2022. The final book in the official Five Nights at Freddy's short story collection, Face Bear Frights number 12, Felix the Shark, has just been released. And as the readers go through the book's 3 stories, they begin noticing a strange pattern. Each story follows a character searching for something, only for that search to backfire, showing how curiosity can quickly turn into trouble. Now a few months later, MadPat, a well-known game theorist on YouTube, uploads a game theory video called Five Nights at Freddy Has Stumped Me Again. He focuses on what he sees in Felix the Shark, suggesting it points to a scrapped Five Nights at Freddy's ARG.
Maybe FNAF was seeding out clues for something similar. Or maybe there were plans to do a similar sort of treasure hunt, but the plans got scrapped along the way. I can't be sure.
He also explains that an ARG, or alternate reality game, is an interactive story using the real world, with clues hidden in actual locations for people to find. And because much of Five Nights at Freddy's lore is connected to Utah, and the story The Scoop follows someone searching around for answers, he points to Utah as a likely place for fans to investigate, and asks them to share what they discover on the game theory subreddit.
It seems like something's here, but if it is, I can't figure it out on my own. Maybe you're a theorist from Utah and you know the locations I'm talking about. Maybe you do know how to break open the files of a mobile game. If you think you've gotten yourself some answers, or maybe just another lead, head on over to the Game Theorist subreddit to post your finding.
Soon after MadPat's video, fans would start posting leads and comparing notes, and the search would move from online discussions to real-world locations. Some would start calling businesses in Utah, and others would drive out to places they thought might be connected, and a few even considered breaking into private residences, turning what starts as online curiosity into harassment for the people on the receiving end. And in early June 2020, a worker at a small diner in Utah would post on the Game Theory subreddit saying, "I work in a small diner in Southern Utah, and we got 17 calls over my shift asking if we were Fazbears. Come on y'all, it's common sense. Don't be harassing people over something that may not even be real." The situation got so severe that the diner had to shut down the main phone line for the rest of the night, just to complete their shift.
Some people actually called the actual places of businesses in the towns that were referenced in the book. According to our subreddit, one place of business actually received enough annoying phone calls that they actually had to shut off their phones.
Now while the thread remained active, some fans insisted that the post was part of the ARG, as others complained that the fun was being ruined. The initial employee tried to respond, but the constant back and forth became so overwhelming, leading them to eventually delete their Reddit account completely. In the days that follow, another user would ask the community to stop as well, noting that other locations were being affected, including a water park that once had a shark as a mascot, which some fans linked to Felix the Shark. The search would escalate even more, when somebody decided to upload a photo of a man's grave from 1987, suggesting to dig it up for clues, which of course is extremely illegal, and that is when most people would finally start stepping back, realizing just how far the search had gone. On June 9th, 2022, MadPat would then upload a response video, calling the whole thing a wild goose chase, and telling the viewers to stop participating.
I never wanted or intended anyone to bother real people, and it's never ever acceptable to harass an individual or a place of business.
And as a result, the search would lose its momentum. Even then, the consequences were already clear, since the hunt pulled real people into something they never asked to be a part of. But unlike MadPat, however, this next person was directly tied to the series itself, and became infamous for her actions within the community.
She also participated in really vulgar Nazi/uniform groups on DeviantArt.
In early 2020, a notable artist named Lady Feshy, who had previously been hired by Scott Cawthon, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, to work on the franchise, would start posting a series of controversial comments on Reddit. The discussion centered around a Five Nights at Freddy character named Mangle, who's gender fluid, and in these comments she would say, "She will always be a pretty girl for me, not this nonsense." In another comment she would add, "Millennials can be triggered by anything. Why can't I be triggered when someone is calling themselves something confusing and non-existent?" And she would follow up with, "I wish back the times when a joke, 'What gender is your baby? It will decide when it will be old enough,' was just a joke and not reality." For someone directly connected to the franchise, these statements instantly face a lot of criticism. She dismissed people's genders as nonsense, accusing them of making them up just to feel unique, and calling others easy to trigger. Now, as a result, Reddit would ban her from the platform, making it clear that her comments crossed the line. And over the next couple of months, users would repeatedly call out Feshi for her past comments. And because of her high profile in the Five Nights at Freddy's community, moderators would even personally reach out, asking her to address the situation. And eventually, she actually decided to respond publicly. On September 28, 2020, Feshi published an apology post. She opens up by saying she doesn't really want to apologize for what she said, but acknowledges that her words hurt innocent people. She then goes on to admit that her comments about gender identities and trans people were ignorant and uneducated. And she then explains that the cultural differences played a role, noting that trans people aren't common in her home country, Hungary. Feshi also claims that she's been harassed and provoked online to say more transphobic things, pointing to the abusive responses she received and emphasizing that this kind of treatment needed to stop. However, things would begin to take a more disturbing turn because of what she said next. But before going into that, I want to thank the sponsor of this video for making this possible, FreeCash. It might sound unrealistic, but FreeCash is probably the first legitimate company I've seen that pays you for playing video games. It's not thousands of dollars, of course, but it was literally free to sign up, and I personally had my first payout within just a couple of days. They have a 4.8 star rating on Trustpilot with over 200,000 reviews. And this is what FreeCash looks like once you sign up to their website, where you can see all the games that you can make money with. And I literally chose one of the most popular games out there, Monopoly Go. Before you start, you just need to make sure that app tracking is available so FreeCash can actually track your progress on the game. And within a couple of days and leveling up in Monopoly Go, I made 25 bucks for just playing a game. And on top of that, you can also get a $5 bonus if you sign up to FreeCash with this QR code or the first link in the description. You'll help out yourself and the channel immensely. And I can now just withdraw the money with PayPal or crypto. Depending on the location, the interface may look a bit different, but it works pretty much the same everywhere. And now let's get back to the video. After saying she regretted all of her past comments, she also mentions that she had received life-threatening messages over a fanfiction she wrote many years ago. The story, now deleted, was her own take on the Five Nights at Freddy universe, involving missing children and her version of the game's killer, William Afton, often referred to as Purple Guy, who she named Barney Miles. Her work sparked controversy because of how Barney and the scenes were written. The most infamous example appears in her fanfiction with Betty, the story's main character. In this scene, her death is described in grotesque detail, depicting Barney taking pleasure in harming her and others in extremely obscene ways. In response to the backlash, Feshi says,
I admit, I got really carried away to show how twisted my version of the Purple Guy is. It had some explicit undertones, but no actual scenes where Purple Guy hurts a It still wasn't appropriate since many fans are young. It would be very different if I write it today.
This still wouldn't be the end though, as more of her dark past would come to light. On January 22nd, 2023, a user named IronAiden07 would post images on Twitter, revealing that Feshi had participated in anti-Semitic groups. The post includes screenshots and commentaries saying,
She's drawn pictures of and is part of groups on DeviantArt. She even did a second drawing of these characters.
The post would quickly catch a lot of attention, with some users reacting in disbelief. One would write,
Why do people idolize that garbage?
While another writes,
There's a
Within hours, these posts would spread across Twitter and the Five Nights at Freddy fan communities, with thousands of people seeing it. And so a month after that, Feshi would make a DeviantArt post addressing more allegations against her. She starts by acknowledging that she got permanently banned because of the recent posts linking her to these groups, responding,
Yes, I joined these groups, that's very true. That was 15 plus years ago, when I was 18 to 20 years old, and just discovered anime/manga. Hellsing was one of the few mangas available in my language. I was super edgy back then and looked up everything with that design. Dark uniforms, blood, evil characters, I loved it. It took me years to realize these aren't edgy, but I totally forgot about the groups I joined. I was lazy to look up the groups I'm not active in anymore.
She would then address the accusations of being a clarifying that these claims were because of her fanfictions about a man she describes as a serial killer. Feshi would explain that at the time she was still edgy and her intent in creating Barney's sadistic personality was purely fictional, saying,
But so you know, murderer men do feel power and when they kill, and they love it. That's why they do it. Some clearly can't differentiate fiction from reality.
She also addressed accusations of being a transphobe, which she admitted were true. Looking back, she explains that at the time she was at one of the lowest points of her life, both mentally and physically, having lived with Crohn's disease for 17 years, and adds that when she's depressed, she tends to get angry and hostile, which caused problems with her family as well. Now around this time, more people start noticing things Fishy did in the past, including that in 2016, she traced several pieces of art created by other artists, with people from the community calling her out because of this. And she would publicly admit it, posting,
"Okay, since Kryptonite Dark Knight was really forcing this, I admit, I traced this image. It's not original."
But even after all of this, more stuff would come out about her. On February 23rd, 2023, a Twitter user named FrepO would post several screenshots of interactions between her and Fishy on DeviantArt from 2016.
Here's an ableism plus transphobia double whammy. I could go on for longer about how she encouraged me, a very obvious year-old, to keep reading her up fanfics, but unfortunately most of the comments from that got nuked.
Later that same day, FrepO would post again, this time sharing a private message from Fishy. The screenshot shows an unknown person relaying a message from a fan, asking if they could write a fanfic based on her work, begging her to not go along with it. And Fishy would brush it off by saying,
"Torturing Ben and kidnapping and hurting Betty? Well, if the writing is good, I would read it."
With her name now completely out in the open, more and more people beginning to scrutinize her, and 2 days after the incident, she would address the screenshots. She admits that she did have those conversations with FrepO, but insists that FrepO actually brought it up first. With no way to confirm her claim, she ends up saying that although the story was initially marked as mature and age restricted, she removed it for greed and likes, calling it a big mistake. And even Scott himself would eventually make a statement on Reddit saying,
"Hey everyone, I won't write much about this here, but I will say that Lady Fizzy no longer does artwork for Five Nights at Freddy's. Scenarios involving are disgusting and gross in any form, including fan art and fan fiction, and have no place in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. It is my understanding that she regrets this time in her life, and I wish her best going forward."
This next person, however, was another well-known figure in the community and was exposed for things that would completely destroy his reputation.
Criminal.
Squimpus McGrimpus was a YouTuber with over 350,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel. They're best known for being a pioneer in the Five Nights at Freddy's VHS genre, a style of fan-made analog horror videos based on a game series. Because of this, they became widely credited for their unique and intriguing videotapes online. Things would dramatically change on March 31st, 2020 though, when a year-old named Blue got into a conversation with Squimpus on Discord. At first it was clear that Squimpus already knew Blue's age, as they asked how old they currently were, and with Squimpus being at the time, it could be argued that both of them were and that nothing wrong could happen. However, Squimpus would not only send Blue NSFW artwork, but would continue doing so for 2 years after they first met. By then, he already turned 20, while Blue was still only. Not only this, but a different user, who we'll talk about later on, would also confirm that Squimpus was already in several adult-oriented groups, but despite that, they would still exchange this kind of content with Blue, instead of using legal and consenting spaces. And soon enough, Squimpus themselves would confess all of their actions in their friend's private server, saying,
"When I was I talked to Blue, who was about stuff, as in we both had interest in it. This was and I'm not gonna beat around the bush with them. I entertained the idea of, if it's not then it's okay, for a very long time. I didn't realize how much hurt I was doing, not that I do. All I can say is that I'm willing to own up to my mistakes, in any way that I can. I did something really terrible, and it's more clear than it's ever been. Just know that I'm actively working to stop myself with these sort of things. Feel free to distance yourself from me until you're comfortable."
Shortly after, a statement from Blue themselves going into more detail about the situation started circling online. They wrote,
"Hello, I'm the one referred to as Blue. I was a fan of Squimp, being in her fan server for quite a while. While she initially approached me complimenting my work, things very quickly went and I eventually got uncomfortable, as she was well aware I was and continued. I was awestruck because she was an idol, and then scared to say anything because she was popular."
All of this would finally be exposed to the world on March 18th, 2023, when a Twitter user by the name of Burner Account posting a thread against all of the screenshots against Squimpus, as well as Blue's statements about the situation. Now, as soon as this post gained attention, Squimpus made another response on the same day, apologizing for their actions and confirming that all of what Burner had posted about them was entirely true. They ended the tweet by saying that they were were the only one truly in the wrong, and that they were going to leave and take months or years before returning to the internet. With Squimbos being gone from the internet and their last video being over 4 years old, it doesn't seem like she's coming back anytime soon. This next one though involves another popular creator whose actions would go on to be one of the darkest scandals in the community.
This apparently included Jody trying to convince a to commit, as well as talking about their
On August 2nd, 2025, a user by the name of The Tickler posted a public letter on Twitter regarding a well-known trans Five Nights at Freddy's YouTuber named GoMotion, otherwise known as Jody. This wasn't any ordinary letter, however, as it went into detail about Jody's years of questionably disturbing behavior towards them. It all starts on March 19th of 2020, when Tickler, who's at the time, receives a Discord message from an 18-year-old Jody asking about their fan game team that they have and if she can be a part of it. After a few days of chatting, Tickler would eventually join a server with Jody and start interacting with her through voice channels, which unfortunately would be the first of many. Their usual conversations start with Jody dumping her emotional problems on him, with Tickler consoling her during those moments. One example of this was when she opened up about her history of self-harm.
Also, I sort of used to kinda a lot. I was so depressed, I didn't know what else to do. And like, you get a legitimate high for it. I still don't hate the idea of doing it. Not that I would, of course, but it relaxed me so much. Don't ever do it again, please. It felt really good, I'm not gonna lie. I promise I won't do it, for you.
But even then, Jody would confess even more disturbing things.
I did bad things, mostly when I was into I was rude to people, other channels who made edits, drove one kid to attempt to leave this earth. I don't talk to him anymore. I abuse people. I was generally just kind of a dick to everyone. Jesus. Well, I wasn't the best person either, so I guess that's like the past now. Gotta focus on like now.
After this, Tickler would explain that Jody elaborated on the situation in a voice chat. She told them she had instructed this person to turn on his camera so she could watch while he attempted to leave this earth. From that point on, the way they interacted began to change, with Jody's fixation on Tickler quickly turning into obsession. Just a week after they first met, she would constantly burden Tickler with her struggles over wanting to be a certain gender.
I just wish I was a cis girl. I understand how upsetting that could be. Hopefully, eventually it's possible. I really want you to be able to have that. You deserve that. I just want a so bad. I just want to be happy. My stupid especially right now. It's uncomfortable as hell. I just want it gone.
Now several days would pass, and Jody would begin revealing yet another side of herself to Tickler, describing herself as having body dysphoria. In a few instances, she would talk about crying, as she was jealous of Tickler's voice, and would say that they're lucky to be born in the right body. Tickler was undeniably off-put by this, and would even apologize even when she hadn't done anything wrong. But not only that, Jody even went as far as stalking Tickler's boyfriend, who we'll call John, out of jealousy towards the two of them, saying that she wants something like that for herself.
Looked at John's DeviantArt again. Heh. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, this isn't your fault. Why do you look at it if it just upsets you? How did you even find it? I don't know. I have a jealousy problem. I just wish I was you so much.
And this kind of behavior would continue.
Looking at John's Twitter, smiley face. I'm just trying to focus on my breathing right now. I'm trying to push the pain out. I'm specifically jealous of you and your boyfriend. I just really want something like that myself.
Over the following months, Jody's messages about wishing to be a woman would continue. But apart from that, in late 2020, two statements from anonymous users we'll call Grigory and Kwan, who also know Tickler, surfaced from the internet, revealing the terrible things they went through with Jody herself.
Although my messages with GoMotion were rather brief, some things stick out to me. She would usually call me slurs when I had noted that they made me uncomfortable in the past, and would raise her voice in voice calls at me at times. She would dump some pretty heavy stuff on me without much warning, but nothing is as weird as she'd confess to me regarding Tickler that she would herself to art made by them, imagining herself as them or characters drawn by them and their art. There were often times in voice calls where she made me feel lesser, insulting me and berating me, even when I was trying to have a genuine conversation. The breaking point for me was a friend telling me Jody saw Tickler interacting with a trans woman, whom she took what the trans woman was saying to Tickler as flirtatious and began talking her, saying things as vile as she doesn't even pass. With that happening, as well as her total transphobic rants on Twitter, I knew things weren't going to change.
It turns out Jody has been doing these things for a while, including using Tickler's artwork in inappropriate ways and keeping it a secret from her for years, which Jody decided to admit to Tickler in March of 2020. What Tickler learned far too late though was that Jody would fantasize about being Tickler in intimate ways. In a conversation between her and an unknown person, she would admit that
I told her about the drawings she made and how I'd have time to myself and look at them and stuff, and imagine myself looking like that, and she's having a tough time processing that, but she only knows about the drawing. She doesn't know how I imagine myself as her, or that I imagine myself as anybody else.
But that wasn't the end of it either. On the very same day Jody admitted this to Tickler, she suddenly began bringing up the idea of visiting during the summer, in real life. For Tickler, the conversation was deeply unsettling, and even though Jody treated it casually, Tickler felt conflicted by how sudden the suggestion was. But as Tickler assumed that Jody seemed sorry for the things she'd done, Tickler simply couldn't deny her visit in the end. As soon as Jody arrived at their house in June of 2022, Jody's actions would only get more terrifying over time. The first couple of days seemed normal, but the day that they went on a hike at a local park, Jody started complaining that her legs hurt and that it was all the walking she was doing. But later that afternoon, after they had gotten home and Tickler's mom was out of the house, Jody admitted that it was all a lie. Jody revealed that the reason her legs hurt is because of her constantly stretching and flexing them to redirect blood, trying to distract herself from feeling while being close to Tickler. And immediately after saying that, Jody would take Tickler's hand and slowly guide it under her blanket. Now surprisingly, Tickler would actually lean in and kiss her, which in hindsight was, according to her, the biggest mistake of their life, as she felt that Jody's manipulation had pressured her to do all these things. Now throughout the following months, their relationship would only keep getting worse. Jody would become deeply obsessed with demanding Tickler's attention every day, growing jealous and aggressive whenever they tried to spend time with their friends, which in turn caused Tickler to lose the people they cared about. She would even admit to even more horrifying things in one of their chats, saying,
I hate my dad. I'm upset about how I'll never be accepted as trans by my family. I want to kill them all.
Now right after this, Jody would continue to harass Tickler's friends from her Discord server, even after promising she would stop. Now seeing her as someone who would never change, Tickler eventually reached a breaking point. So in December of 2024, Tickler decided to stop communicating with Jody altogether, but Jody would refuse that, and her behavior would grow even more unstable because of that. She would keep spamming Tickler with messages, despite being told that they want space, and would even stalk Tickler across multiple social media accounts, and even publicly threaten to hurt themselves over the situation. Now months would pass, with Tickler no longer being in contact with Jody, and things would finally start to quiet down until May 21st, 2025, when Tickler would discover that Jody had been making hateful statements and extremely transphobic posts on Twitter, saying, "Let's become a statistic together." No longer wanting to tolerate her actions, Tickler would finally decide to gather all of this as proof of Jody's actions and expose her in front of the entire internet through a document. However, this isn't the end, because 4 days later, after the expose got posted, Jody would upload her own response document detailing her side of the situation. In it, she denies having taken advantage of Tickler or manipulating them, immediately using her mental health issues as justification for her actions. She also admits to being obsessive, but immediately blames Dad on her OCD. And she would also argue against Tickler's claim that she told a kid to turn on his camera so she could watch while he tried to leave this earth. She says he simply wanted to call on Skype and didn't explicitly say that anything was wrong. She adds that this situation happened because they were both causing each other issues in a Minecraft server, and she had no idea that this would result in him trying to hurt himself in front of her. Now Jody would also talk about how she used to fantasize by pretending to be the opposite gender, which she specifically did to Tickler, saying,
A few months after T had turned while I was 18, I did things to myself as them. Similarly, I felt euphoric imagining myself as female. There were no ulterior motives to this.
And she would end her document with an apology to Tickler, saying,
T, if you're reading this, I'm so horribly sorry for how I ruined it.
To this day, even with all of the backlash and constant hate towards Jody, she still continues uploading videos on YouTube. Tickler, on the other hand, and many other people who were affected have now just started to get out of this long-standing nightmare. But this wasn't the case for the next individual, who became notorious for a lot of disturbing allegations against him.
It claims that Blackout has fantasies involving physical abuse to the point of bodily harm, murder, and having with dead bodies.
It's February 26, 2018. A German game developer named Nishi, also known as Blackout 1912, together with his team, releases a Five Nights at Freddy's inspired horror game called Dormitabus. The game is heavily inspired by the original Five Nights at Freddy's universe, but became infamous for its own story, focusing on a girl named Maria, originally based on Chica, one of the main animatronic characters from Five Nights at Freddy's. In this version, she suffers a brutal death at the hands of Garvey Wright, a character designed to parallel the franchise's antagonist as William Afton. Almost immediately, the game gets recognized by most people in the community, even getting playthroughs from popular YouTubers such as Markiplier and Dako, making it undoubtedly one of the most popular Five Nights at Freddy's fan games of 2018. However, over the following months, many began to notice how disturbing the game truly was, even for a horror game. Its popularity gradually decreased due to criticism of its gameplay, story, and voice acting. But just 2 years later, it all went downhill because of one man. On November 12, 2020, a well-known game developer within the community who requested their real name not to be mentioned and who we'll call Andre, uploads a video exposing Nishi for having done deeply horrible things to multiple users online. It all goes back to 2016 when Andre meets Nishi and becomes friends with him. And although things seem fine at first, their friendship begins to fall apart due to one factor. Nishi at the time is known for being incredibly rude to every person he essentially talks to. And with this in mind, it doesn't take long before Andre starts witnessing how Nishi has been harassing people in the Five Nights at Freddy's community.
Nishi at the time was known for being a very, mean person. He was very critical of the fan game community, and he would attack people like King Carter, Sama Gamma, if anyone remembers that, Adam HD, and all that.
Which leads to Andre cutting things off with Nishi completely. He makes it clear that he doesn't want to be associated with someone who's verbally assaulting people he doesn't like, seeing that Nishi has grown even worse.
Eventually, it got to the point where I ended up cutting my association off with him. He was becoming a very bad person. I just didn't want to be involved.
And he surprisingly doesn't take it well. He begins harassing Andre in various ways. And with the people affected by his actions, a decision is made to post a video exposing him 2 years later.
This led to him harassing me. It started a whole rivalry between us. He would send his friends after me. He would comment on my game jolt. He would do all sorts of things. Eventually, this experience, along with many other people's experiences, led to an exposed video on him back in like 2018.
The video posted in 2018 covers dozens of allegations, including multiple instances of Nishi's abusive and disturbing behavior. These claims detail him having depraved obsessions, taking pleasure in the idea of physical abuse, manipulating people, cheating on his partner, and using others for inappropriate activities. With this amount of information against him now entirely available online, Nishi vanishes from the public community.
This led to Nishi leaving the FNAF community and basically going under the radar. And it worsened our relationship too.
And unfortunately, the video somehow disappears from the internet as well. But even after the leak, Nishi wouldn't stop going after Andre. The harassment continued, and he eventually even began stalking him, blaming only him for making the video. On a random day in the same year though, Andre would be added to a group chat out of nowhere, and he would discover that the group consists of girls who had indecent interactions with Nishi. It's also at this exact time that Andre starts to finally connect that these girls are the ones mentioned in the expose, all of whom Nishi allegedly used for engaging in adult activities online. Out of all of these people though, there's one that really stands out to Andre, which he disturbingly refers to as the year-old.
Out of all these people, there was one that really stood out to me. It was the person who I'll just refer to as the year-old.
He explains that to his understanding, Nishi somehow got into contact with this person, which led to multiple illegal acts involving somebody not of age. He also discovers that Nishi sent an inappropriate photo of his behind to several people inside this group chat, specifically targeting the year-old. Shortly after revealing this piece of information online, a number of people would refuse to believe these claims, one of them being a user named Honko, who begins publicly defending Nishi and accuses Andre of fabricating everything. And this sparks a whole new thing. Andre would point out that Honko has been harassing him for years too, going back as far as 2017, which makes it hard to take his statements as anything more than a personal grudge. Now, by the time these allegations surfaced, Nishi already left the internet, leaving one final message on his GameJolt account saying,
"Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on, and you should as well. Bye."
After this message, no further updates about Nishi emerged online. And although his allegations never disappeared, many felt that Nishi has gotten off far too easily, given his long history of abusive behavior and everything he was accused of. This next individual, however, is another creator whose game never got finished once people learned about the sickening things that he actually did.
Back in 2022, he got into contact with him and started sending NSFW images and videos to him.
Now, fan games have always been a big part of the Five Nights at Freddy's community, with some of them gaining almost as much recognition as the main series itself. And for a while, Night Shift, a Five Nights at Freddy's inspired game, looked like it could be one of those projects. With several people involved in its development, as well as many fans looking forward to its release, the game was beginning to look like one of the next big projects within the community. But despite that, it would come to an abrupt end, as behind the scenes, things weren't quite as they seemed. On August 5th, 2022, a 10-year-old user named JenPen began talking to Xyler Guy, who was Night Shift's main developer, after responding to a message he sent in a Discord server they were in. At the time, Xyler was well over 18, according to a friend we'll discuss later. However, despite that age gap, in one conversation, Xyler would send Jen a video that seemed normal at first, but moments later, it would begin flashing images of explicit material, such as inappropriate depictions of drawings of small humans, as well as suggestive and NSFW images. And Xyler didn't just send these types of images once either. Over the course of a few weeks, while already knowing that Jen was a little person due to his age being displayed in his bio, he would continue to send unsettling content he called memes, which included even sensitive imagery depicting men. Now eventually, Xyler would descend into sharing even more sickening material, which was highly inappropriate content involving, again, little humans. As Jen would describe it,
in total there were 2 images of with their private parts, and one which was the most disgusting picture that I've ever seen in my life.
He went on to explain that what Xyler sent to him contained 2 images. One of the pictures, according to him, showed 3 small humans engaging in activities that were horribly obscene. Now surprisingly, Xyler wasn't the only disturbing person in the team. His friend named Blue was the co-director and main programmer of Night Shift, and he was caught talking inappropriately with a small human too, while possessing and distributing extremely indecent images of small humans. After gathering all of this evidence, Jen would finally reveal all of what they did to the entire internet. And in 2023, they uploaded a post containing a document on the gaming site GameJolt, which would lead to Xyler and Blue disappearing from the internet until now. But what this next person did was so severe that it horrified the entire community.
And it's that he's inspired an entire community of animal abusers to murder their cats on YouTube and post videos of it. It spawned an entire trend.
It's September 11th, 2014. Mattia Vera Oyarzo, a 10-year-old boy from Chile, has just made his YouTube channel named Peluchin Entertainment, with his channel name meaning plushie in Spanish. He starts uploading videos with his collection of Disney and Teletubby plushies as characters. But about a year later, his content would suddenly change. The innocent, kid-friendly videos he uploads turn into crude animations, and before long, his channel is almost entirely dedicated to covering the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Now he continues to make these videos for over 3 years, and the videos in total would garner over 12 million views and gain him a substantial number of subscribers. Around this time, however, a lot of horrible things would start appearing, not just on his channel, but affecting him personally as well. In one instance, he admits to his audience that he frequently watches and laughs at gore videos at such a young age, and he also becomes more and more socially dysfunctional, intentionally getting into conflicts with other creators for no reason other than to stir up drama, which would eventually result in strikes to his channel, as his recent videos at the time technically qualify as cyberbullying and harassment to YouTube, and eventually his behavior would even get worse. In November of 2018, for example, Matthias uploads a now deleted alarming video on his channel titled Tortazo, which translates to smack, showing him with his head blurred out, violently grabbing his cat by its limbs and fur. Community sources also say that the annotations about what he's saying in Spanish started appearing at this time, with him saying,
"Before I killed my cat had 2 broken limbs."
He then continues to shove his cat around on the ground and steps on it, with annotations appearing again saying,
"My cat now has a wounded tail. It's a little bit dislodged too."
He then kicks it onto the couch, grabs a wooden kitchen spoon to whack him before the video ends. And soon after, he would also upload other videos showing him hurting the cat with cat food and putting him in a toilet. While his toxic behavior has already been escalating for months before this, the backlash he's been getting up until now pales in comparison to the outrage this video brings. Although the video is now deleted, he would respond to the accusations of animal abuse in a pinned comment, which when translated reads,
"Seriously, there are animals who are saying that this is animal abuse. What a shit exaggeration. Ha ha ha. I don't know what's going on through their minds to consider this animal abuse."
Now what's even worse is that just a few days later, Matthias claims on his channel that the cat had passed away because of natural causes. Now the video would spread online almost immediately across various online forums, which ultimately led to him being doxxed, as some wanted to see revenge on the cat's behalf. A hashtag would even start circling around called #JustinForJason, which was the cat's name, and multiple change.org petitions would be created to terminate Matthias' channel and call for legal actions against him. Unfortunately, Jason the cat isn't the only animal who fell victim to him. On December 15th, Matthias adopts 2 new kittens and would proceed to do the same sickening things with them as he did to his original cat. On one particularly gruesome video, he would record himself dropping one of the kittens into a toilet and washing it and watching it struggle. Now, several English-speaking creators would begin exposing the situation to a much larger audience, and he would then upload now deleted tweets where he says,
I don't know who's been telling you that I regret what I did, or that I feel bad about my cat dying. To me, it's worth nothing. Besides, I haven't done anything to it, and I regret absolutely nothing.
Thankfully, as more attention grew on Matthias' actions, an acquaintance would finally step in to save the cats, posting a picture of them on Facebook with this message.
The cats are away from Matthias. As the only that knew where they were, I went to fetch them, and right now they're under the care of my family, while we look for people who will give them an appropriate place. Soon we'll speak to an animal rights advocate to promote their adoption.
At the same time, people online would also reach out to the police, who later released a statement on Matthias' case, saying,
We informed the prosecutor's office regarding these occurrences, which ordered certain procedures that included an investigative process, such as putting together witness reports to establish the identity of this person, his parents, and how the events occurred.
Just a few months later, more of his actions would start coming to light.
This first one I believe you've probably heard of a couple years ago because it was kind of big news. The channel's called Pollution Entertainment. I believe it was run by a year-old Spanish-speaking YouTuber who filmed multiple videos where he was beating, kicking, pulling, throwing his cat against the wall until he eventually killed it on camera. He then adopted some kittens, which he flushed down a toilet trying to drown them and beat them as well, and it became kind of a big deal, at least in the Spanish-speaking YouTube community.
In August of 2020, almost 2 years later, after he took the life of his first cat, Moist Critical would bring attention to the story once more, highlighting the fact that in the wake of the original story, several other Spanish-speaking channels would begin assaulting and ending the lives of their cats in the name of Matthias.
But he's also inspired a trend among Spanish-speaking YouTubers where they go out and beat and kill cats in his honor. For some reason, this deranged loser has become some hero to animal abusers online.
Now, thankfully, as Moist Critical's video gained more attention over time, the majority of Matthias' many YouTube channels were terminated a month later. However, on November 17, 2021, Matthias, on yet another account he had created, would suddenly upload a video titled, "This November 25th, I will be sentenced. Will it be my end?" The video opens with a short clip taken from the footage of him, just before he made his cat leave this world. He then says it was considered one of his most heinous crimes, to the point that 4 police cars were sent to take him into custody, while also confirming that during this time he was being treated by a psychiatrist. Matthias ends the video by directly stating that on November 25th he can finally be sentenced for the crime he committed 3 years earlier, and just a few days after going to court he would upload an update on another channel, which would also end up terminated, writing,
I haven't had a definitive response about the sentence yet, so I'll start uploading videos again. And no, this wasn't an invention of mine. Lying about judicial matters is a crime. It's obvious that I wouldn't lie about that. I'll let you know when I receive a definite response.
And with his new channel named Matthias, now active on YouTube, he continues to create and upload content from time to time, which is crazy to think about. And while opinions remain divided over whether he deserved to still have a platform or not, the name he built for himself was something that will never be erased.